Unconventional Life, welcome. This is Jules Schroeder. I'm your host, super fired up to be here. Today we've got Shannon O'Donnell. Shannon, are you ready to take us down the road less traveled?
Absolutely. I'm excited to be here today. Thanks.
Awesome. Well, Shannon is joining us from Mexico, world traveler. Shannon is a long-term traveler, National Geographic Traveler and Writer of the Year in 2013. And she travels slowly, hunting down fascinating stories of people all over the world. I met Shannon at a TEDx speaker workshop about 2 years ago. Her story is fascinating. The amount of countries this woman has been to with hosting her blog, A Little Adrift, and all the things she's up to is remarkable. The perfect candidate to be here on Unconventional Life with us. So Shannon, welcome to the show. Go ahead and fill in any of the gaps that I might have left out and tell us a little bit about your personal life.
Oh, thanks so much. I really am grateful to be able to be here, and thanks for the fantastic introduction. As you said, I left in 2008 to travel around the world. It was supposed to be a one-year trip, but because I was working online and I was able to build up my business over the years, I've been able to maintain a lifestyle where I work from the road. And that's allowed me to travel through Asia and Africa. And I'm actually sort of hunkered down in Mexico right now to come up with new ideas and get some more clarity on things that I want to keep doing going forward in the next phase.
Yeah, awesome. Great to have you. Well, tell us a little bit about, how you're making it all work. What is your revenue model today? Take us behind the scenes, behind the curtain. What does that look like? How do you keep making it happen?
All right. Well, when I left to travel at the beginning, so in the beginning of my business, the sort of location independence working, I had the majority of my work was doing freelance SEO, and I had a couple of clients, and then that shifted into online marketing, where once SEO included social, it was hard to believe that when I started out, Twitter wasn't really what it is today, and Facebook pages didn't yet exist and things like that. So my SEO morphed into social media consulting, and then alongside of that, I built my blog, A Little Adrift. And I fully admit that I had an early mover advantage, where A Little Adrift was one of the first solo female travel blogs to address sort of long-term travel. What's it like to be on the road? What do you need to pack? How do you deal with your taxes? And what do you do with your mail? And all of those nitty-gritty questions alongside what's it like? What are the people like? What are their stories? And what does this kind of lifestyle give you when you decide to hit the road? And so that blog gained precedence. As you said, National Geographic named me Traveler of the Year. And so I make some income on that. And I'd say it's split about 50-50 now, where the income comes from the online consulting and the websites.
Awesome. Great. So National Geographic Writer of the Year, fascinating, awesome accomplishment. So for those of you listening out there that want to travel and want to write, make sure you pay attention to what Shannon's about to share with us. She's, amazing at what she's doing. So take us down, at what point was it happening? I know you said in 2008, you decided to take this trip around the world, which you thought was just going to be a year. But how did it happen? Life was going one way. And then at which point, what was it that had you decide to pursue this path less traveled?
Well, I was living in Los Angeles at the time as an actress, and I had some of the more conventional sort of benchmarks for making progress. I had an agent and I was going on auditions, but because I had online income, and for some people that's just, they travel with a savings. But for me, I had this online work and all of my clients are based off the internet. And I just decided in 10 years, do I still want to be in Los Angeles or do I want to have traveled? And I'd always said I wanted to travel. And in a spur of the moment decision, I'm not prone to waiting very long. I think I took about 3 days. I just decided I was going to go. I told I handed in the landlord letter that said like, hey, I'm leaving in 5 months. I bought a ticket, a one-way ticket to Australia 3 days later, and packed up my belongings and sold it all and decided that I could figure it out as I went. And that's when I launched A Little Adrift with the idea of helping people, because this process wasn't well established of what it was going to be like to not only travel, but work from another country.
Yeah, great. So what was going through your mind when you decided to launch A Little Adrift? Had you ever done a blog before? Did you know anything about a travel blog? Anything about what you were going to do? How did that work?
I had no idea. I had some really basic skills, the first version. And if you went to Wayback Machine, you could see a really terrible looking blog because I designed my own header and really, blogging was quite newer in 2008. So I designed my own blog. I researched all these other niches and I was just really digging in, trying to figure out how would this be useful, because it helped that I was planning my own trip. So everything that I was looking at on the other travel blogs, there were a handful, none of them really solo female. I said, well, they don't have this, so I'm going to make sure that what I create does, because I need this information and it's not there. And I had to figure out the hard way. I was researching in Lonely Planet books and in the old school style,
Yeah. Yeah.
And in forums and that. So I was overwhelmed, though, with the process of launching a blog, planning to travel, and it actually didn't catch up with me until the day I was leaving, just how terrified it is to pick up everything and leave. So the morning that I was going to leave to travel, I was in Los Angeles, staying at a friend's house, and I kind of had a full-on 5-year-old tantrum. I was like, I can't leave. This is a horrible decision. I'm crying. I was doing the ugly cry, as Oprah would call it, And I was like, this is horrible. I'm going to be in a country all by myself, no friends for a year. And my friend talked me down. And once I got on the airplane, though, I realized that the blog and helping people do this was where I wanted to be.
Yeah, great. I love it. So Wayback Machine, what Shannon is pointing at, for those of you that don't know Wayback Machine, you can go to Wayback Machine and literally input any website and you can see the history of it from the lifetime it was. So kind of a fun thing to do, to go to some bigger websites and see it back in 2008 or whatever year. And so I love, it sounds like how this thing unfolded was a lot of experimentation. It was okay, I want to start a blog. I have never done this before, so let me look at what's out there. And here is my niche. I'm a solo, female entrepreneur, writer, and what exists, and then seeing what was missing and then really adding your unique flavor to it. And then I imagine probably throwing a lot of darts and figuring out, what is it that people want and how does it work? And so, tell us, there you are, you're in Australia, you're in your first country, you've just gotten started on this thing. What was it like, getting your first few posts up there and making it work and just being there? I imagine, in a lot of ways, it was probably some way of a challenge and a struggle. What was it like?
It was, I think that one of the really powerful things, and I would tell someone starting out, is to imagine yourself in the box that I had, which was blogging wasn't. Now there are thousands and thousands of travel blogs. So if I was creating a travel blog today, I would have all of these examples. And it might not give me the freedom to imagine what I want mine to look like, because it'd be oh, here's all of this, and I kind of need to fit within what's there. But in 2008, there was this open box where I could do whatever. There were a couple people posting a daily photo. Some people were sharing just their personal stories. Other people were sharing stories of only the places. And that was maybe it. And a lot of people had already come back, and it was just completely the Wild West of blogging in 2008. And that gives you a lot of freedom that I feel some entrepreneurs, when they're looking at the niche and everyone's got these worksheets you need to figure out to build your business. But in addition to looking at the competition and looking at what's existing, there's a freedom in pretending that you're the first in the space, and what would it look like if you could create it from the ground up.
Yeah, I love that. I love that. So for those listening, going and making a trip, especially as a woman, a single woman, to travel around the world, for some listening, that might be not even in the realm of possible. And for others listening, that might sound super exciting. And so, tell us, after you left LA, you're on the road for a while, what was going through your mind? Did you have any doubt ever, or think about turning back, or how was that mentally balancing all of the uncertainty of just newness constantly?
Australia has this is the reason I started, was Australia has a really good backpacking culture. They speak English. It was a sort of dipping my toe into the travel. And after that, I landed in Bangkok. So it was my first developing world country. I traveled to Europe before that. And then Australia was my first trip around the world. And I was in Bangkok, and I remember I caught the Wi-Fi of the guest house next door because mine didn't have it. And I called my dad, and I was like, Dad, this is nuts. I am completely overwhelmed, and everything is different. And I really don't think I like Bangkok at all. So within a day, I bought a ticket to Laos because everyone said it was much more relaxed. And I got on a bus and I hightailed it out of there so that I could better acclimate to it. But I had my doubts then. I was like, maybe this was a terrible decision.
Yeah.
I should turn around.
Yeah. How did you navigate that? So what did you do to mitigate some of the doubts? Because I know some people might have been I'm buying a one-way ticket back to the United States. I am ejecting, I am out. But you decided to keep going. And so how did you manage having this uncertainty and the newness?
I slowed down. So a lot of times, don't make the rash decision to buy the ticket. There have been times where in the heat of just being really frustrated or lonely, I'll look online and look at the tickets, but I won't let myself buy the ticket for at least a day or two, because there are other things you can do to make sure that it's a decision you want to make in truth and not a reactionary decision. So for me, it's Skyping. Like, I called my dad, I Skyped home and got sort of the reassurance of that familiarity, that I wasn't completely alone in the world in this completely unfamiliar environment. And then I also stopped moving. So in Laos, I found a place that I liked, and I decided to stay there for 2 weeks instead of trying to move every 2 days. Yeah. Which is what a lot of people on the beginning of their longer term travels will do, is you move really rapidly. And it's a great idea to see a lot, but as a human being, we can't always process the constant intake of information. And that was it. So I decided to slow down. Laos was a great country to slow down. They have a very laid back, hello, everybody speaks much more. There's rivers that you can just relax on. And that's always been my go-to in the last 7.5 years, was when I feel this overwhelming feeling of, I can't do this anymore. What was I thinking? I stop. I call home, I email my best friend, and take stock of it all.
Yeah, such great advice. The concept of just slowing, often we think that we need to work harder, push harder, make it happen, do more. And in reality, it's in the space and in the slowness and the stillness that gives us the time to refresh. So I love what you're pointing at there. So for all of you listening out there, slowness is the key to success in so many ways. Awesome. So how many countries have you been to so far? I mean, that was, 2008. So 7-8 years ago that you've been doing this. So how many have you been to so far?
I don't have the exact count, but it's in the 55 country range.
55, yeah, which is amazing. And so after that first year, which was your initial plan, what was the point in which you first started to monetize what you were doing with The Little Adrift, the blog that you have? At which point did the money piece start to integrate and you were like, okay, I think I can keep going, and I think, this is working, like I can, keep making it work. Take us back to that time.
So it was actually longer than a lot of people. You can make a blog profitable if you have the right niche in 6 months to a year, if you asked some certain people. But what I was monetizing was my story and the way that I wanted people to see the world. And so when National Geographic named me Traveler of the Year, one of the reasons was because of the way that I share the stories of the places, and I encourage people to integrate grassroots tourism and a type of tourism that's more than checking off the sites. I think you should go see the Taj Mahal in India. I'm not saying don't do that, right? But I'm also saying that the real experience of travel comes when you are integrated in, you're finding opportunities to talk to the local people, explore an interest, be it go visit a weaver and understand their life, or do a homestay. And so this style of travel, this website was harder to monetize for a long time, and I was unsure of what to do. I didn't want to put direct advertising on it. So it took a longer process. My blog actually has, different than many, it's monetized a little bit through affiliate links, where maybe on year 3, so this would be 2010, 2011, I started putting on affiliates for the travel insurance company that I use, and all of the travel gear I use I link to Amazon. But my business model is much more related to, once this brand got larger, A Little Adrift, and me as a person speaking about this type of travel, the money comes from speaking and at universities and writing for other publications about this style of travel. So I used it as a portfolio of sorts as well.
Yeah, awesome. So I've seen firsthand some of your stories, some of your pictures. Shannon is amazing at storytelling. And I think that, what you're pointing at here for those listening is that it is about you. You are the one, through your lens, we're understanding and seeing these people and these cultures that we might not normally be exposed to. And so what do you think are the good elements of your stories and how you tell them? Like, if you were to look at the secret sauce behind the way that you unfold it, why National Geographic named you Traveler of the Year, what are those components?
More than anything, in the early years, I wasn't quite exactly sure how I felt about travel, like what it was about travel that I wanted to share. But when I share the piece about traveling with a purpose, traveling with this grassroots tourism where you're infusing money in the local economy, it's this that I passionately believe in. And so if you do the market research, I'm not sure if you're going to find that, like you can do your SEO research, and I'm not sure from a business perspective that you'd find the justification for this. But more than anything, as you were saying, like the story part of it, it's not just about the story of the people, but it's my story. What can I write about every day for the next 7 more years that I have this brand that I completely believe in? And so when I'm looking at the stories of these places, it's through this absolute core belief I have in my own life that as travelers, we have the ability to lift the places that we travel just by our actions as tourists. Mm-hmm. And so all of my stories are infused with this. When I write about the local quesadilla maker here in Mexico, it's about how supporting her, I'm able to help her build her business and support her family. Not just her story, but how my actions as a tourist. And that underlies all my stories. And that's what National Geographic resonated with. And that's what has brought me to universities to speak with students.
Yeah, wonderful. So, I imagine some of you listening might be like, okay, she's been to 55 countries, local quesadilla makers. Like, give us like a glimpse, day in the life, maybe of one of the favorite places you've been to. And maybe just unpack like one of the people you met or just one of the stories that feels like really alive to you in your heart.
So actually today, recently I just posted about Georgia, the Republic of Georgia, which is a really misunderstood country. I remember when I showed my dad on the map where I was going, for the first time in 7.5 years, kind of got the eyebrow raised. He was super skeptical. It borders with Iran there. It's next to Turkey. It's got a sort of a skeptical location if you're following what's going on in the Middle East. But Georgia is not the Middle East. It's actually sort of a part of Asia, part of the Central Asia Caucasus region, but not. It's got a European feel. So when I went, didn't know what I was going to get, right? And I landed and was completely blown away by the people and the culture. One of my favorite experiences was everyone kept telling me it's safe. It's safe enough for you to hike up to the fortress. There's this 4th century Narikala fortress that sits over the city. And from there you can see everything. So I hike up, right? And I'm like visiting the Mother Georgia statue. They have this big statue there that they're super proud of. And I'm there taking pictures of it, and I hear this singing. And Georgia is known for its type of singing. It's really unique. It's on the UNESCO Intangible Cultural World Heritage List. It's a very unique, but it's more than that. It's not like in the churches or just in performances. They love singing. So I kind of like creeped over to where this group of people were, and they saw me, and they just like drag me into their group and hand me a beer. And the one person who speaks English starts telling me about it as they do this group. Kind of sounds almost like a choir singing. And I end up hanging out with them for several hours. I missed the last, what are they called? The little cars, funiculari type cars that go down. I missed the last one down, back to town. Because I'm hanging out with them, and just for hours they're passing me beer and nuts and any food that they have, and they won't let me leave. They just want to like share with me their culture and their singing, and it's such a good evening. So as we're leaving, I was like, no, it's okay, I'll walk down the mountain by myself back home. It's like 1 o'clock in the morning. And instead they put one of their friends in the trunk of their car and put me in the back seat and drive me home, like drive me to the roundabout that was right near my corner. And as they're driving away, like everyone's waving to me, and that typified Georgia for me. Just being open to the experience of sitting with these people. This is the type of experiences that I think a lot of people want when they travel, but fears of like sitting with a group of locals until 1 in the morning might stop them. And I'm not saying do it in every country and in every place, but being open to the fact that a lot of people have this kindness and they want to share their culture with you gives an entirely different experience to your travels.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. I've had also big traveler myself, and integrating reminds me a lot of Guatemala.
I loved Guatemala.
Yeah. So there you are, you have this amazing experience, and you said you just wrote about it. So give us like the business side, put the business cap on for a second. So how do you capture, a beautiful experience like that and then put that into a piece and then, put it on your blog? Is it just as simple as that, or what is that process like for you?
For me, business-wise, it's more about shares, for me with the promotion, because I'm not monetizing a product, which is very different than a lot of people building businesses, but because I'm monetizing my own way of seeing the world, it is about putting this lens on and really making it clear, so making sure that the thread line through the story is evident about what I think the value is of traveling to this location so that it gets shared by people so that they want to generate interest. But where that might like translate into income for a little adrift and myself is is potentially like down the line either working with the tourism board. There's those opportunities. I don't do it often, but if I return to Georgia, because I wrote about them and I could work with them in the future, I also will have a travel guide for Georgia that will be optimized with, you know, affiliate links to the places I stayed. And so in authentically representing the places, I would never gush about a place that I didn't love.
Yeah.
But when I do, I make sure that it's shareable and that it has the thread line of the story, and that if a university saw, they would want that story, right? It's, do you want me to tell that story to your students? Do you want me to stand up on stage and present this style of travel and this belief of travel to your students? So I sort of put that behind every story because this is my portfolio. My blog is my portfolio of the kind of things that I would share on stage.
Yeah, wonderful. One of the things that I'm getting and I love about you is just your honoring of yourself and your authentic nature to your work and the experiences that you have. You are like a no BS kind of gal. And it's like being in the experience and just the full transparency. And I think, you know, I've read some of your work and that's what you bring into your writing. And so for those listening that are wanting to start and cultivate these blogs, you know, I wonder if you'd agree with this, but staying true to yourself above anything else in your writing, in creating your portfolio, is one of the most integral parts of making this whole thing work. Would you say so?
I do. And it's interesting because I think that there are faster avenues to income, right? I think that if you do the top 10 lists, so in the travel space, that would be writing 10 things to do here and doing the things that go viral or, you know, do the Upworthy type headlines. These might get you more traffic and build a different type of business. But the business you and I are talking about really relies on you being authentic to yourself and your belief. And I think that it's a longer term plan. I think this is how you build a remarkable business and not just a business. You build one that's built on authenticity and people relating to you and identifying as a part of your community around a belief system. Like, people don't read my site if they don't believe that travel has the power to impact destinations and be a positive force for good.
Yeah, absolutely. So when you left in 2008, did you have any idea, you know, you would be named National Geographic Travel of the Year, you'd be speaking at colleges, you would be still traveling in Mexico? Like, did you have any idea that when you started?
No idea. I was going to go home at the end of a year. And even when I started the second year and the third year of travel, it was for a love of the travel and the story and the sharing, not... Anyway, the National Geographic, I have to admit, I did a happy dance when I found out. It was just such an honor, incredible to be chosen by them.
Yeah. So what about people that, you know, I feel like often people think, you know, in order to follow the path less traveled, you need to have the whole plan figured out. And what I find in these stories, like with you and others that, you know, I've had on the show, is that everyone, it's like it unfolds as you're in it. And so if it keeps feeling good and you keep following that passion, the paycheck, the money, the revenue models, the opportunities seem to just align for you. And so what was that like, you know, coming out of all of these years traveling? And now I know you do a lot of speaking and you're working a lot with universities. And how did each opportunity in your experience keep presenting itself? And how did you stay balancing that, like, I'm not sure if this is going to keep working in a few years, but I really, really love this. And, you know, how did you keep the game face on as you were moving through pioneering a completely new industry?
A lot of it is, like you said, flexibility. I am a goal setter. I'm a little bit type A. I've got my list. I have to-do lists and 10-year plans and all of this. But alongside of that is the same Shannon who bought that ticket with 3 days notice, the one-way ticket to Australia. And so I try to run the business like that too, like completely being open to when that email arrives in my inbox or I meet someone who has a new opportunity, to saying this could shift in a really good way. Like the decision to book that one-way ticket was spur of the moment. It came out of nowhere. I hadn't been plotting for years to do a around the world trip, but I embraced the opportunity and the direction that went. And I feel like that's a really important thing in business, is to completely be open to each new opportunity and not be stuck on that goal. Because if you're only working toward this one idea of what you envisioned for the future, you can't go on all these tiny other pathways that may create something even bigger.
Yeah, Awesome. Absolutely. So let's get into the nitty gritty before we move into the rapid fire round, which is my favorite part of the show.
All right.
And so last question here. What is, for someone that's listening that says, okay, I want to travel around the world. I want to have this blog. Shannon, I love what you've been saying. What kind of revenue can they expect, to be making? Give us like a little glimpse in the world of it.
Oh, this is a tough one. So like I said, my business model wasn't around making the money off of the blog. And some people, their business model goes around getting sponsorship or working with tourism organizations. And in that type of travel, you can usually just cover your expenses. Takes a few years to be able to separate yourself out from all the other bloggers. I really have to be honest, like I had another business. I do the online consulting, and that was what funded these first years when I wasn't making an income from the blog. And it's what's also allowed me to keep integrity with the blog and not feel like I needed to sell sponsorship or do things that might not have afforded me the opportunity to be Traveler of the Year. As a brand ambassador for something else, I'm not sure they would have picked me. So I would say making sure that you don't put all of your expectations. Blogging has a lot of unpredictability. It can take 6 months. It can take 3 years. And having the space, right, having some of the other income or the longer term plan is really important.
Yeah. Awesome. Wonderful. All right, great. So for those of you listening out there, I know I love what you're pointing at. Sometimes we think, let's throw ourselves in the fire. And I think throwing yourself in the fire can be a great approach, but it is important to look at what is it that works for you. And for you, you were clear, I don't want to flood my blog with sponsorships. I don't want it to look like Pandora. I don't want it to look like YouTube. This is important. Yes. And so getting clear on what is your brand and your image and how do you stay in alignment with those pieces as you build and move forward. And so I love it. Awesome. Well, thanks. Shannon, let's go ahead and move into our rapid fire round. So this is the point where we ask about 6 different questions super quickly. Are you ready for the rapid fire round?
I'm a little nervous. I don't know what these are.
All right, Unconventional Life Tribe. Here we go. Let's get started. All right, Shannon. So question number 1, what was the biggest thing holding you back from going down the path less traveled?
Fear of the uncertainty and unknown and unwillingness to jump in.
Awesome. What was the best advice you ever received?
Oh gosh, the best advice I ever received that we're all making it up as we go.
Okay, great. What was the hardest thing you had to let go of in order to pursue this path and what you love?
That there was a right way that I should be building my business, and that it should look like someone else's, or that there was a right way to do anything related to anything I'm doing. There is no right way.
Okay, great. What is a personal habit that contributes to your success?
I'm an early riser and I believe in it. While everyone else is still sleeping, I have my piping hot cup of coffee and I'm getting the work done. I start on the road. It's super important that you get your work done before you go play for the rest of the day.
Great. If you could share one internet resource with us that is like the make it or break it for your productivity and organization, what would it be?
I use Trello. It's open right now, and it's where I do all of my task management. I keep a track of emails, blog tasks, ideas, everything. My entire life is there.
And Shannon, how old are you?
I am 32.
32. And last question, what would you say to your 18 or 20-year-old self that would be just getting started? If you could go back in time 12 years, what would you say to your 20-year-old self?
Fail at a 10 more often. I failed at a 5 a lot. I held myself back out of fear, and I would say just go all in and fail at a 10.
Awesome.
Because if you're going to fail, you should just fail to having tried your hardest.
Love it. And lastly, Shannon, what does living an unconventional life mean to you?
It means the freedom to live a life that I value with the values that I put forth. It means traveling. Oh, tough question. What does a life unconventional mean? Freedom. It's the freedom to live a life that resonates with who I am and who I think I can help the world become.
Great. Well, Shannon, thank you so much for being on the show. Tell all of our listeners how, if they want to get in contact with you and learn a little bit more about your blog, A Little Adrift, where do they go do that? How do they stay in touch?
So alittleadrift.com is the website. I am Shannon RTW on Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat, a little drifts on Facebook. You can reach out any and all of those ways.
Great. Well, Shannon, another great episode. For those of you listening, thank you so much for tuning in. We will talk to you later. Thanks for being on the show, Shannon.
Thank you so much for having me.